Hello, my name is Jacqueline Pollauf, and today I wanted to talk about extra strings, specifically what I keep in my string bag so that I'm easily able to replace a string as needed, especially when I'm out and about with my harp. And I think one path that many people follow is that when they first start playing, they don't necessarily keep any extra strings on hand, and instead if one breaks, then they just go ahead and order that string, and once it arrives, they put it on their harp. But as people go along, many times they find this to be insufficient. Sometimes it's just a bit annoying to have to wait for the string to arrive if shipping takes a few days. And frequently also, as people start performing more, they realize that if they're in a performance situation and a string breaks, that could really be a sticky situation. So they want to have some extra strings with them to be prepared for that eventuality. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And this is fairly straightforward. There are the extra strings themselves. I have a complete set, but some people carry a skeleton set for their extra strings, and I'll explain more about that shortly. There are also the tools needed to replace a string. And then there's keeping everything well organized and easy to carry around. So I have here my string bag with all of those things in it. This is a full-size pedal harp with 47 strings. And as is standard, those are made out of 3 different materials: nylon for the upper strings, gut for the middle, and then wire for the bass strings. And since I have a complete set of extra strings, that means that I have 47 individual replacement strings. And it's important to have the correct replacement string for each of these, not just because the materials change, but also the diameter of the string changes from string to string. So even on adjacent strings, the thickness of the string is slightly different. And one major objection that people have to having a complete set of extra strings is that it's quite expensive. And there's no way around this. Strings are expensive. But one thing I do that many professional harpists do is that when I purchase a set of extra strings, then I keep those on hand for a year in case anything breaks. I'll have what I need. And then when I go to do my annual restringing, I use that set of strings for all of my new strings. So the strings are not just sitting around gathering dust. I do use them at the end of the year, and then I purchase a new set of replacement strings to become my emergency strings to have on hand, and so on. Another small bonus to keep in mind is that for many of the higher strings, the length of string that comes in the package is long enough to get 2 or even 3 strings out of it. So when you put it on, it's quite long. There's a lot of extra, and you can trim that off and save that and use that the next time. Unfortunately, that doesn't carry through for the lower strings, but that is a nice bonus for the higher strings, is that you get more than 1 string for the price of the string. A common question that people have is whether there's a way to be strategic about what extra strings you keep on hand, whether you can just keep the strings that break most commonly, or whether there are some kind of warning signs that a string is getting ready to break. And unfortunately, the answer is that there's not really a great approach for any of that. Any of the strings can break without warning at any time out of any of the materials, and that is usually the way that strings break, is they just let go. Once in a while, a string might go out of tune badly for a couple days before it breaks, but generally there's nothing to indicate that the string is about to break. I would say that the wire strings break a little bit less frequently than the gut and the nylon strings, but certainly I have had a wire string break in a performance situation, so that's quite possible too. However, one thing you can do to be strategic is to have just a set of skeleton strings rather than a complete set of strings for your extras. And this is just what it sounds like. A set of skeleton strings is the bare essentials. So of course, an octave on the harp has 7 strings to it: C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Or if we're thinking about that in terms of replacement strings, there's a red string, then 2 white strings, a black string, and then 3 white strings. So what you can do is you can purchase 4 strings per octave to cover the eventualities in an emergency situation. So in this instance, you would want to have the red string and the black string, since those are colorful and so important to finding our way on the harp. And then you would just want to have 1 of either the D or the E and 1 of the G, A, or B. So that way, if either the D or the E breaks, you can use whichever string you have on hand to replace it. And the same thing up here, regardless of which of the 3 strings break, you have something that's similar enough that you could replace it in a pinch. And of course, purchasing just 4 strings per octave rather than all 7 is a savings financially when buying strings. One thing to keep in mind with this, though, is that if you do end up putting the wrong string on a replacement in a situation like a rehearsal or a performance, and that's great to get you through that time of playing, but then you do want to go ahead and purchase the correct replacement string and replace it as soon as you have a chance. So if this B string were to break and you were to replace it with the A in the moment, then you'd want to go ahead and buy the correct B string and replace it quite soon after that. In addition to the replacement strings themselves, I carry a few tools so that I'm ready to change any strings as needed. Here we have a tuning key, which obviously is primarily part of the tuning equipment, but it's not a bad idea to have an extra tuning key in with the extra strings, since it's impossible to replace a string without a tuning key. And then I have some nail clippers that I use to trim off the excess for the smaller strings. I find that makes it very easy to get in there and just cut those right off. And of course, then if I need to trim my nails, I can do that too. Some people prefer scissors for trimming off their small strings. For the big wire strings, since those are so thick and heavy, wire cutters are needed to trim off the excess of those. And then this last one, I suppose, is really more of an accessory than a tool. But here we have some string ends to use as string anchors. And it's a good idea to have whatever you use as string anchors on hand. So that way, if you need to tie a knot for one of the smaller strings, you can tuck one of those in and have an excellent knot. So those are my tools and accessories that I carry in my string bag. Then, of course, you want to put all of your extra strings and things into something so that you have them all in one spot. And people use all different kinds of things for this. For myself, I find that this small black bag works really well. It's actually intended for makeup, but it's great for strings too. And I really like this because, for one thing, I can just grab it and put it inside my larger gig bag anytime I'm going anywhere with my harp. And then I know that I have everything I need with me. And in a performance situation, I actually take it out of the larger bag and I tuck it underneath my bench, which is also black, so it's quite discreet. But then I have my strings right with me on stage. And I have, in orchestral performances and things, had a string break and needed to grab it and go ahead and replace a string right then and there. So then within my string bag, I try to keep everything really well organized. I have all of the strings in octave sets, with each set rubber banded together, and starting with the highest string and then moving down to the lowest string. On this side, I have my wire strings and my wire cutters, and then in this little interior pocket, I have some of my smaller things, my tuning key, and then my string anchors, and so on. And I find that having everything really well organized is very helpful so that I can just quickly find whatever I need. Of course, if I do end up replacing a string, then I make a note of it and order a new string and pop that in my string bag as soon as it arrives. So there is my string bag. I hope this video has given you some helpful information about what extra strings and tools you might want to keep on hand and keeping everything really well organized and ready to go. So if you do have a string break at an inopportune moment, hopefully you'll be all set to deal with it. Good luck to you.